Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this, the National Training Agency's 9th episode in its TVET webinar series. I am Dr. Patrice Parisils, Manager of Research, Planning and Development at the NTA. As many of us can appreciate, Trinidad and Tobago has had a long history of vocational training and skills development. And during that time, we have often seen vocational development being targeted at a cross-section of stakeholders, servicing varied objectives and goals. We at the NTA, however, as an agency under the Ministry of Education, we believe that it's important for us to always be mindful of and sensitive to the views of the stakeholders and the general public as far as the persona of a TVET is concerned. And that is for that reason NTA and thank him for his support of our initiative and ask him and invite him to lead us in this conversation now. Mr. Guy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sills. I appreciate the introduction. Pleasant afternoon to the viewing and listening public of Trinidad and Tobago. I wish to commend the National Training Agency for undertaking such an initiative in raising the profile of technical and vocational education and training in Trinidad and Tobago, which is so very much needed. So I congratulate you on your initiative and support your initiative as you go forward. To begin my presentation, I wish to first present an overview of the topics that I'll be covering this afternoon. We'll start off with how is technical and vocational education and training defined. Then we'll move to a macro perspective on TVET, institutional branding of TVET, which would cover what is branding, target market and segmentation, messaging, promotion, increasing the reach of TVET, marketing and communications, tools and channels, and education. Now, I chose to begin with a definition of TVET. According to the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, and the International Labour Market, the ILO, technical and vocational education and training, or TVET, refers to aspects of the educational process involving, in addition to general education, the study of technologies and related sciences and the acquisition of practical skills, attitudes, understanding, and knowledge relating to occupants in various sectors of economic and social life. I just want to reiterate here the study of technologies and related sciences, the acquisition of practical skills, attitudes, understanding, and knowledge relating to occupants in various sectors of economic and social life. So then, why in Trinidad and Tobago we see TVET as a second option? Why does TVET carry a negative perception or connotation? And the whole thrust of TVET is to satisfy the labor market demands of the economy. When you look at countries such as Norway, for example, they have taken their vocationally oriented programs and they have made it part of their ordinary higher education. So there's no distinction between vocational and non-vocational higher education. Finland, over the last decade, has upgraded the quality and status of TVET to the point that over 50% of their youth now choose vocational programs as their first option, literally competing with general education. So where are we in Trinidad and Tobago? And this takes me to a macro perspective as far as TVET is concerned in Trinidad and Tobago. Building TVET's national reputation. Actionable rationalization, integration, and harmonization of TVET. One of the critical things that has to take place in TVET is the offerings that are provided by both public and private institutions that are in line with the sustainable development goals of the country. This is part of the rationale behind TVET. And without proper rationalization, integration, and harmonization, the readability, the permeability of TVET throughout the system, it does not meet the goals of the development or sustainable development of the country. And what this does, in fact, is create some confusion, some misinformation, and perception of what TVET is and who TVET belongs to. I recently read an article by David Supra, an academic article, 2013, where he spoke about making TVET relevant in a postmodern Caribbean. And he hit the nail on the head in that the curricula ought to be designed and adapted to match the current era in which we're at. He noted that academics need to be integrated into TVET because one of the underpinnings of TVET is science, technology, math, communication, leadership skills. And he defunct the theory where persons who don't do well in school can be channeled into TVET, and they can successfully complete their training and perform in the workplace. And he's basically saying that is untrue, and I actually agree, because the very tenets of TVET requires some understanding and knowledge in science, requires understanding in math. For example, if we're talking of the construction sector, you cannot just go out in the construction sector, pull a tape, and can't read a tape. Don't understand fractions, don't understand numbers. So when we talk about actionable rationalization, integration, and harmonization, while we've seen it reflected in various policy documents, the most recent being the draft policy document on education 2017-2022, it highlights the challenges and the issues in this sector. And the unfortunate thing that currently exists is that we have a multitude of publicly funded TVET institutions such as YTEPP, MIC, NESC, etc., that offer programs, but there's no harmonization, there's no rationalization. They're fighting for the same pool of persons, and in some cases, even the titles of the programs that are offered doesn't match the job titles in the workplace. So to build the reputation for TVET and to garner that support and respect and the branding of TVET, there has to be a consistent message, there has to be rationalization, harmonization, and integration so that the general public, communities, the labor market can view TVET as something that is worthy. Top performance, TVET National Scholarship Awards. Very recently, at the National Award Ceremony, Her Excellency Paula May Weeks, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, asked a very pertinent question. Where are the mechanics? Where are the electricians? Where are the designers? Why are they not represented at the award ceremony? And it's a very pertinent question because it highlights the inequalities in our education system and the heavy emphasis on academia. The same academics require TVET to bring work into realization. You need a skilled worker in order to materialize plans, visions, to bring those things to life. And if we reward the best, the brightest minds we have in TVET, it changes the perception of TVET. It makes TVET worth going after. The brand of TVET becomes valuable. So this is something, an angle in which, I'm hoping that the president's question did not fall on deaf ears, and we can actually see a change in the presentation of awards being extended to practitioners or students of TVET. Imagine picking up your newspapers and seeing a headline, skilled workers now required to be licensed in order to practice. You often hear the term 21st century worker being touted, but what does that mean? What does that come with? What are the codes of conduct for skilled workers? So, without licensure, it removes that quality. So in some instances, you hear about a licensed electrician, a licensed plumber, and it sort of stops there. We need to introduce licensure to skilled practitioners, to raise the bar, to raise the profile of TVET, to gain respect for TVET. I remember while vacationing in Canada, while browsing around in a mall, I saw a hair salon that had an advertisement asking for a barber. And when I read it, they're asking for X amount of experience, certification, and a license to practice barber. A license to practice barber. So the issue of non-licensure of skilled workers is one that ought to come to the front burner, and one that ought to be taken into consideration, which would bring some balance, which would bring some relief, as a matter of fact, to the fraternity of skilled workers. So when you call on a skilled worker, know that they adhere to certain rules, regulations, and occupational standards that exist in the area in their discipline. And a review. Renaming TVET to remove the negative connotation. In April of 2019, the Malaysian government, through their Ministry of Education, decided to undertake an overhaul of the entire sector. They too experience TVET as a second option, as persons who have failed at schools, underperformers, and they too are channeled into TVET. And it has created in the minds of the population that TVET is not worthy enough. It cannot be on par with other professions. So they are now toying with the idea of renaming the entire sector, making it more attractive, and filtering that down into communities, into families, into the labor market. So after reading that particular article, an idea came to me. Why not have all publicly funded institutions, training institutions, carry the handle community college? Perhaps that would resonate in the minds of the population that this is something that is worth considering. This is something that I want to participate in. Imagine a young man saying, I want to go to community college to be an electrician or plumber or mason. It carries with it a certain sense of pride. I remember the days of the John Donaldson Technical Institute and the San Fernando Technical Institute. These institutions were pride institutions. You saw them in their uniforms. They were very confident. They boasted of being in the TVET sector. And there was pride. I am actually a student of the John Donaldson Technical Institute. And it was a pride to go there. It was a first option. There was a line. You had to be interviewed, because there was just a mad rush to enter this institution. So perhaps the time has come for Trinidad and Tobago to reconsider TVET as the name of a sector, and to look at avenues in which the entire sector can be rebranded, and it is more settling and more acceptable to communities, to the population, to the labor market. And we no longer see TVET as just some channel or avenue for persons who are underperforming with academics. This takes me to an institutional perspective on branding TVET. But before actually getting into strategies and tactics, I'm going to first define branding. Marketing guru Philip Kotler defined branding as a name, term, sign, or symbol that identifies the maker or seller of a product or service. Branding, therefore, is the process of giving meaning to a specific organization, its products and services, by creating and shaping a brand in consumers' minds. So essentially, branding is that perception that your consumer has of you, of your products, of your service, of your values. It is what the consumer identifies you with. This is what branding is. So to further give an example, you have 3 bottles of water. It's just water. You know water is important for our chemical processes in the body. You see those 3 bottles, you just pick up a bottle and you drink because it's water. However, branding these bottles changes your perspective. You have Aquafina offering pure water. They show a nice mountain to give a sense that it's pure. You have Dasani. You have a nice little leaf there showing that their value system is in the green economy, recycling, they care about the environment. And then you have Nestle, pure life. You have a man, a woman, a child in abstract there, reflecting family. So what they are selling, they're not selling water. They're selling an experience. They're selling a brand. They're selling a belief system, a value system that can relate to you. So when you go to that store, you go for that product or that service that relates to your lifestyle, that you can affiliate yourself with, that you can be a part of. This essentially is what branding is. When you walk into a room and persons see you and you walk out, what do those persons think of you? That is what branding is all about. So now that we have an appreciation of what branding is, we get straight into the target audience. In order for your brand to be effective, you need to first target your audience. Specifically, target marketing involves breaking a market into segments and then concentrating your marketing efforts on one or a few key segments consisting of the customers whose needs and desires most closely match your service offerings. This is what target marketing is, and it's so critical in packaging your brand, packaging your message. Segmentation then has 3 common avenues. You have demographic segmentation, which takes into consideration your gender, income level, age, education. We have geographic segmentation, which looks at your location, region, community. And we have psychographic segmentation, socioeconomic class, lifestyle preferences. And with this segmentation, breaking it up like this and determining the services or products that you provide, how it best meet the needs of your segment. An extremely good tool that allows you to segment your market is actually Facebook. You can actually define your target audience on that particular tool. It gives you age, gender, it gives you lifestyles, it gives you behaviors, it gives you the demographics, it gives you everything that is required to make an informed decision on where you position your service or your product. So when you reach that stage of segmentation, you can now package your offerings that actually hits the nail on the head, that meets the requirements of your target audience. Once you have your target audience, it becomes critical as to what you communicate to your target audience. This leads us to making your message count. Having a clear and consistent message can be the difference between a phenomenally successful campaign and an utter waste of time and money. By defining your message, your audience can relate and understand who you are, what you believe in, and what you offer. Without a defined message, your target audience becomes totally lost and confused as to who you are. So, Creating a compelling message can resonate with your audience. Developing your communications plan and creating a message, you use one message so that it can be easily remembered by your target audience. Your message should reflect your core strength as a TVET institution, such as the quality of your training and its outcome. In this regard, this example, quality training with real results, is a message that the YTEPP Limited carries with it throughout its campaigns. Consistency. It is important that you have and maintain consistency in your messaging. A consistent message reminds your audience of what you are about, and it makes your brand more dependable. So there's an absolute need to be consistent in what you say, to be consistent in your promise to your target audience. And branding your message. Branding your message sets the tone for how stakeholders view the training services you have to offer. Your message should accompany your logo and be a part of all your campaigns. And this image here sort of reflects just the branding of your message. Your key message, quality training with real results alongside your logo and the outcome of your training. Now, while we have packaged and created our message to our target audience, promoting TVET is an important aspect, and more so promoting the outcomes of TVET. Too often, we see institutions that do a host of advertising, showcasing their programs, showcasing their courses, but it does not satisfy the market as to where does this lead to, particularly the youth who is trying to map their career. You tell me come and do photography, but what is the end product of photography? Showcase the outcome, sell the job, and not the course. That way, your audience can relate to your message. Your audience can see the outcome of TVET. They can project themselves, and they can then set their path to the career choice that they choose under the umbrella of TVET. Have testimonials of success. Nothing beats the testimony of someone who has experienced your training. They become brand ambassadors of TVET. They become the voice of TVET without the institution even uttering a word. Promote the outcome of training. Promote your brand ambassadors. And this particular video clip here gives you an example of what I'm speaking about. So what we saw there, the brand ambassador of YTEPP Limited, who has experience in training and who is in a position to now showcase the outcomes of the training, quality of products, the fact that these products can now be monetized as a result of experiencing TVET. And interestingly, when this video was first posted on Facebook, it had 10,000 views. 10,000 views of a brand ambassador speaking highly of technical and vocational education and training. Speak to TVET in terms of benefits. Speak to the earning capacity of TVET. I would share a very personal experience. One time on Facebook, I saw an advertisement about a particular water heater, tankless water heater. And if it just suddenly stopped working, and in the ad, the person said, they can solve the problem, don't buy a new water heater. So I decided to call. He said a visit was $300, and then when he assessed the situation, depending on what needs changing, there's another cost attached to it. So he came in, well presented, had his work bag and so on, took out his electrical instrument, tested for electricity, said there's electricity, and then he went on, he unscrewed the thing, said this is your problem here. This part needs replacing, and it costs $300. Should I proceed? I said, well, yes, proceed. In 10 minutes, this person was able to come in, do an assessment, identify the problem, solve the problem, and walk away with $600 in 10 minutes. I mean, I was astounded. And I asked, well, what is your background? Tell me a little bit about like how you got into this thing. And he said, I studied electrical installation, masonry, and plumbing. And I felt they all were interconnected, because if I'm doing electrical and I have to burst the wall, I'd have to plaster back the wall, and the same applies for the plumbing. So he had a vested interest in TVET, and he saw the earning capacity of TVET. And just like that, 10 minutes top, he was able to earn $600. So promote the earning capacity of TVET. There's higher education, a Master of Arts in Education, Leadership in TVET and Workforce Development, offered by the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus. So there is an upward articulation. You can, in fact, reach the level of a master's degree. The openness of TVET to both females and males. Give life to TVET. Talk about TVET. Language TVET. Always in a positive note, so that the outcomes can be appreciated, the outcomes can be known. In promoting the outcomes, you also want to increase your reach of TVET. Spread the wings of TVET. Go to them. Go to where you are likely to engage your market. This would include communities, secondary schools, malls, fairs, job fairs, wherever your target audience is, that is where you ought to be. It cannot just be about being in one location and hoping that they come to you. Take TVET to them. Be proud of TVET. Speak to TVET. Sponsorship. Sponsor skills competitions to raise the profile and importance of TVET. So, for example, YTEPP Limited would have participated in hair and beauty shows in that particular cosmetology sector. But the interesting thing about that is that not only do you have the participants or the students being a part of this competition, but you also have stakeholders within the sector that come in there to observe and to headhunt. And this gives a sense of pride and purpose to the participants of TVET. They themselves become brand ambassadors as a result of the experience that they would have had at these competitions. So don't be afraid to sponsor competitions to showcase the work that your institution is doing and creating at the same time your brand ambassadors. Align to industries. Promote TVET as being highly accepted by industries. Nothing beats, again, the testimony of industry partners. Nothing beats the output of training and the value added to these industries through TVET. And apprenticeships, open apprenticeship opportunities in the private sector. One of the advantages of apprenticeship is the fact that your participants are able to engage in new technologies. They are able to work alongside skilled workers. They are able to work in teams. They are able to communicate. They are able to solve problems. They are able to take advantage of the opportunity to produce items for profit. It's a real live work environment, and it's the beauty of apprenticeship, because not always would an institution have the up-to-date technologies, would have the equipment, would have the tools to really expose trainees to the rigors of the world of work. And apprenticeship opportunities create that. So it's imperative that you form alliances, strategic alliances with the private sector that can open the door, that can open the window for opportunities for your participants. I dare say that perhaps the time has come to remove the term apprenticeship and call it internship. That way, it creates the perception of being on par with other professions that require internship. This takes us to the tools and channels that can be used to engage your publics. This particular model, integrated marketing communications plan, was taken from market text. It's not my own creation, but I found it very useful for this purpose. And what I want to explain is, well, one of the advantages of an integrated approach is that it creates brand visibility. It increases media coverage and it improves your overall results. Sticking to one mode of communication or one method of communication and marketing can actually disadvantage you, particularly in today's era of technology, ICT, information and communication technology, and various social platforms that exist. Here, I pulled out, for example, special events, highlighting some of your special events. In this case, YTEPP Limited would have highlighted its graduation ceremony as an end product of its training, where the participant can stand up with pride, with honor, to advocate for TVET and advocate for persons' youth to be a part of this sector. So showcase your special events, showcase your TVET. Social media has become one of the mainstream avenues for information. It allows brands to engage with its customers. And the engagement is such that you have potential customers who interact with your brand, who research your brand before you, the organization, even realize that there's an interest in your brand. So social media is one very effective medium by which you can communicate to your audience. Sometimes an approach can be your social investment in communities, in what is happening in the current time. And this particular video showcases YTEPP Limited's corporate social responsibility based on what was happening with the COVID pandemic locally. So have a look at this approach for social media. So the thing about that particular video is that you had a social responsibility with regard to providing, at the time, masks to various NGOs throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And what was even more interesting, an indirect approach in reaching out to your audience and the general public, as a matter of fact, is that in the description, we noted that it was trainees and tutors that participated in the production of these face masks. So we are utilizing the very trainees that we would have exposed to garment construction and fashion design to be a part of production, to be a part of something that was meaningful. And this was an engagement we had on social media with regard to focusing on what was topical, focusing on what was important. We had well over 3,000 views with this particular video. You too can promote TVET in that kind of indirect manner. The website, another important avenue. In this regard, you have the end product of training being showcased on your website, in addition to the name of the course. So while you see the course being advertised, you see the outcome of the training being advertised, and the website, of course, being very prominent. Ensure that you utilize your website in every campaign that you do so that persons can access information and learn more about what you do and how TVET contributes to the national landscape. Industry public relations, shipbuilding and repair, meeting the needs of a diversified economy. It's a conversation of where TVET can move hand in hand with the sustainable development goals of the government, so that as the government moves towards achieving its particular vision, the skilled workforce is right there at its side, providing the much needed labor that is needed to bring into fruition development goals that we have or that the country has outlined. So utilize your industry, have your industry partners speak about TVET and what it has done for their organization and what it has done for the sector. So there are various avenues that can be taken. You have the traditional newspapers, radio, TV. Advertising is one of the most common methods by which companies or brands interact with its audience and provide information. It's the most common way to bring about awareness. But an integrated approach through trade shows, online, email marketing, branding strategies, website, etc., provides greater visibility for you, provides more information about, or rather information reaching the various audiences in order to get an appreciation of TVET. Education or educating stakeholders is a very critical aspect of the promotion and branding of TVET. I've had the experience when the National Training Agency advertised this particular webinar series. I had some phone calls and they asked, well, what is TVET? Well, what does that stand for? What does that mean? You know, a doctor asked me, is TVET a thing now? They were not aware of what TVET was and what it was related to. And I found it very informative because while you're in this sector, sometimes you slip and you assume, well, it's widely known. But just that little sample in that brief space of time made me recognize the importance of educating stakeholders from a national perspective, community perspective, and even a family perspective. One avenue in which to do that is through engagement with employers and stakeholders, even decision makers, on the viability and profitability of TVET. In this particular image, it's an event that the YTEPP Limited hosted with regard to how TVET can contribute to the profitability of an organization as well as add value to communities. In fact, that YTEPP as a TVET institution that delivers TVET played a very pivotal role in achieving such a goal. It used that opportunity to edify, to inform, to bring about awareness, to show the value of TVET. And one strategy was getting the policymaker involved in the process. In this regard, the Minister of Education, to be involved and speaking the language and promoting TVET on a higher level so that there can be buy-in. There can be an appreciation for the value of technical vocational education and training. Educate communities. Host an open house to educate parents and communities on the value of TVET. At the Valencia Training Center of YTEPP, we invited communities to an open day to see what the institution has to offer, and more importantly, to hear from our brand ambassadors, to hear from our trainees who would have experienced training at that center, and to get buy-in as to where they can align themselves to what is currently happening in the industry. Showcasing again the value of TVET, and more importantly, showcasing the pride of participants of training under the umbrella of technical and vocational education and training. TVET helps lower unemployment and underemployment, and it's something that we should not ignore. TVET plays a very critical role in how we reshape and shape the environment, and it gives credence to the training that is offered for industry as well as an emphasis on self-employment. So, technical vocational education and training is a sector that is worthwhile, that is very critical to the development of Trinidad and Tobago, and it should stand hand in hand with academia. There should be no divide, and it should be seen as an avenue to a career, to a profession that one can hold very proudly of. So I wish to conclude my presentation at this time and invite any questions that may exist.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Guy, for that very thought-provoking and informative webinar. I feel like if it is that I just saw a small movie, I got excited about the prospects of being like our international partners and having no distinction between TVET and academia. And then it got me all sad because I realized quickly that this is not a haphazard exercise. I have to strategize and think and be consistent with my messaging. But I think we all would appreciate that branding is about the promise that we are making to our stakeholders.
That's correct.
It's about selling the experience and being mindful that we all have to do our part in strengthening the brand of TVET. So we have come to the question and answer segment. We will treat it more like a conversation. So as the questions come forward, I will just we'll just bounce it off of each other, right? I want to start firstly with a comment that you had made in your webinar about our current training providers and the environment in Trinidad and Tobago, where you mentioned that by and large, we are in fact competing for the same stakeholders. So in light of that, in your estimation, when you look at the environment as it is right now, what can really be done to get all stakeholders to get behind a common messaging, as opposed to an institutional branding opportunity?
Well, the thing is, I believe that it really has to start from the level of government, particularly where government is funding technical and vocational education and training institutions, so that if we are talking about sustainable development and we are talking about having a skilled labor force to meet those needs, then the conduits that would give out the skilled worker ought to be in line with those developmental goals. So there has to be a situation of integration. If we are talking about level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, there has to be a smooth transition between institutions. It cannot be a situation where organization A, B, and C are offering level 1 courses, the same courses going after the same audience, and then each institution carries with it a different message, carries with it a different brand. It has to be the same language. It has to come from the level, I believe, of policy. It has to come from the thrust of government. It cannot be a situation where we are saying, all right, we have a solution for school dropouts. We have a solution for the man on the street or the guy or the young woman or man on the block. Go to do TVET. It cannot be that language. It cannot be that message. So on the one end, you are promoting quality training with real results, satisfying the market, satisfying the needs. And then on a higher level, you hear any conversation, we have a hole to put somebody who dropped out. So that is where you have the mixed messages. And this is where the languaging affects the brand of TVET. All right, I'll give you a real life example within the education system. One time, YTEPP Limited hosted the Future of Learning at the Hilton Hotel, extended invitations to various secondary schools across the country, trying to get RSVP feedback and so on from some of these schools. I decided to engage them to find out, well, hey, are you going to attend the event? And one school principal said to me, yes, I got the invitation. However, my students and the school by extension would not be interested in anything that YTEPP has to offer, even if it is at the Hilton Hotel. True story. So if within the very education system, the perception on the side of academia is that TVET is not worthy enough to even participate in the future of learning, then we see what the problem is. It has to come from an administrative level. It has to come from a policy level and filter down into the education system, much the same as Finland would have done, much the same as Norway would have done. They have one higher education system. Whether you choose TVET or academia, it's one. It's branded as higher education.
Thank you. So many of us would have recognized, I'm just being told by my team that just like myself, they really enjoy the webinar. They don't want to miss any detail. And apparently the presentation that you made with the testimony, there was no audio. So I want to ask your indulgence and to play it for us once again, please.
Of course.
Hi, my name is Sana Ali and my skill is cooking. I chose this area because it satisfies me to prepare dishes and have the people who eat it tell me how amused they were by something I created. I participated in and completed the commercial food preparation course with YTEPP. This area has changed my life because I have a passion for cooking and I also do baking on the side. So I get confident every time I cook, every time I bake. It's something that I love.
Thank you for that. Jumping right back into our questions. Against that backdrop, one of our participants wanted to know how important it is for the general population to really understand the acronym TVET. Or is it branding is more about the generic field of skills training? Which one is the one that is going to be most critical to focus on as we go forward?
Well, the thing is, TVET is the sector in which the skills training takes place. And in the conversation and in the messaging, we need to connect skills training to TVET. And emphasis can be placed on skills training as a brand, as a message, but at some point it has to be tied into a sector. So skills training can in fact be emphasized. And in my presentation, I would have mentioned perhaps the consideration for renaming TVET as a sector and through consultation from all the various stakeholders and really take a closer look at TVET and skills, the term skills training, and see where we can find some common ground that is acceptable and that one can be appreciative of going forward.
Thank you. And so we have another question. The reality is that you would have pointed towards the need for the national campaign to be done at the strategic governmental level, right? But as it is currently, what is the role that you foresee internal stakeholders within the institutions playing, like the trainees, the tutors? What is the expectation in terms of branding that we can call upon them to contribute?
Well, the branding has to start with the communication. What you communicate to your trainees, the pride that you said, the inspiration that you give to these persons. Because as I mentioned before, they become your brand ambassadors and they can speak to their experiences of training. The institution has a role to play, the trainees have a role to play, the community, the families have a role to play. And my little issue is when we brand skills training or TVET as a place for school dropouts. You see, because the person coming to you with that seed planted, that there's no hopes of coming and they come with their head down. So within the system, when we capture them, is to change that perception, change that feeling, and have them get a sense of pride that what they are doing contributes to the national. I mean, when you look at, we're at a stage in a technical revolution. We have innovations in science and technology, and TVET plays a very pivotal role in providing the necessary skill set for the development of the fourth industrial revolution, as a matter of fact. So TVET, skills training, trainees, these institutions are part of a bigger picture and play a very critical role in the establishment of a skilled and ready workforce for the development of Trinidad and Tobago. So on a micro level, each and every one of us play a very critical role within even your household. Don't tell the child, well, boy, you dunce head, you better go and learn a trade. It shouldn't be that. Why don't you get a career in the electrical field? Why don't you get a career? Why don't you pursue? It cannot be that you're failing at academia, so go and learn a trade. That is the language that has to change. So we have a collective responsibility from family, institutions, and government to promote TVET in a positive light so that there is much appreciation for the sector and understanding for the sector.
So because you are wearing the hat of a manager at YTEPP, unfortunately, you get a YTEPP question. Or I should say fortunately. Okay, so one viewer would like to know, does YTEPP actively collect information that it is able to utilize to convince the private sector of the viability and the benefit of TVET?
Yes, that is a very good question. As a matter of fact, very recently during COVID, as a matter of fact, our research department headed a major study to ascertain where we were at in the sector, what the needs were, and where they saw the needs going. And we engaged not only the general public, but we engaged practitioners within TVET. We engaged participants of production, private sector, on avenues for TVET and where we are at. So at YTEPP Limited, we consistently scan the environment. We look at what we have now and where we are going. We take a very close look at the sustainable development goals of the government, their thrust, their angle, their avenues toward diversification, and we then review our curricula, our facility, our partnerships to ensure that we are in line with the goals set out by the government with regard to development. So YTEPP is very much involved in the research. We ask the key questions. We look at ways in which to promote TVET, in which to promote skills training, and we use a lot of the voices of our participants to promote, as well as our strategic partners within the field of industry. And extending, for example, we have the welding sector or construction sector, we have the health sector. So we are across the sectors that matter. And we are moving towards that direction. We are now looking at things like mobile app development, cell phone repair, ICT training. We are looking at providing e-learning online, flexible and blended learning. So we are moving with the times. We are adapting to the environment to ensure that TVET remains relevant.
So outside of the ensuring that your programming is adapting to this post-COVID reality, right? What do you foresee at an institutional level training providers can do right now to ensure that the message is that TVET has a role in our post-COVID reality?
Well, very much so. And as I mentioned before, we are talking about a technical revolution, and we're talking about innovations in science and technology. One of the things that the COVID-19 highlighted is the use of ICT, the use of digital media. So there has to be a stronger emphasis on flexible and blended learning as being part of the new normal. And what this entails, of course, is educating and preparing our youth for the digital age. So while we may flout flexible and blended learning, online learning, we have pockets of youth who are not very computer savvy, who are not very, or who are challenged with using digital devices and so on for learning. So it has to take place on the ground level. It has to be very strategic in aligning how we reach these persons, how we overcome challenges, and we make the new age or new era one that is embracing so that no one is left behind.
Okay, so our the next question is twofold. right? So one of the viewers wanted to know, what are the protocols in place for skills training amid the COVID pandemic?
Yes.
And is there any expectation that this is likely to cause a decline in registration and the turnover that we would expect to see out of
Right.
training institutions?
Right. Well, what is going to happen is that protocols are in place. YTEPP Limited and all institutions, all places of learning, as a matter of fact, are guided by the Ministry of Health's protocols and guidelines that they have set out. So what you would find in the new normal when you return to classes, social distancing is maintained within the training area, within the classrooms, within the workshops. You'll see social distancing, hand sanitizers, messaging to remind you to wash your hands, etc. So protocols are in place, not just at YTEPP, but all places of learning, to maintain the safety of all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. The thing about it is that institutions would have constraints with regard to space. So because of the social distancing, where you would have perhaps initially had 16 persons in a class, by the time you space that out by 6 feet, you cannot accommodate 16 persons at that time, maybe 8 persons, 10 persons. So there may be some staggering of classes, or with regard to intake, there may be a reduction in the number of persons that can register and participate in the training, simply because of the necessary protocols that are in place for the safety and security of all participants in the training and learning environment.
Okay, and a complementary question would have been that in light of your protocols and the thrust towards going online and using the technology for the delivery of skills training programs, I guess it's more of a comment. One of the comments coming out of the audience would have been that isn't that likely to slow down the responsiveness of TVET, therefore, and which impacts the brand of being relevant and responsive to the needs of the economy. If it is that you have to slow down now to put your quality checks in place to ensure that your delivery remains as it was with the face-to-face engagement.
Right, well, the thing is, it's not really a slowdown, it's a benefit, because the world is in a different era, and as Mr. David Subran spoke about postmodern Caribbean, we are in a postmodern era. So with regard to the introduction of flexible and blended learning, it's not that you're removing all entirely the face-to-face interaction, because TVET is very practical in its orientation. There will still be practice of your particular discipline. However, what you would see augmenting the practice is the online technologies that are available to us. It is the way of the future. So we encourage participants to embrace online training, to embrace technology. It does not disadvantage you, and it certainly does not disadvantage the sector, because when you go into the world of work, you are expected to perform, you are expected to engage in technologies. If you look at simple as mechanics, you have hybrid vehicles. For you to begin working on these vehicles, you have to have a diagnostic kit, which is a sort of computer that you have to interact with in order to ascertain what the problem is before you delve into actual mechanics and repairs. So it is the way of the future. I don't quite see it as a setback or holdback on TVET. It's actually value added to technical and vocational education and training.
So ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the close of our question and answer session. So I want to officially thank you for your support and your continued viewership. And importantly, I want to thank Mr. Guy for joining us on this adventure. This was truly a very thought-inspiring and informative webinar, and I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day.
Thank you very much.
Maintaining your protocols and everything, and subjecting yourself to come into this space, right? Ladies and gentlemen, we will, as per usual, upload our video so that you can send the link to your colleagues, spread the word, and assist the NTA into spreading and disseminating valuable information to our stakeholders. I want to also invite you to look out for advertisements concerning our e-convention that is going to be next week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Join us. You will get further clarification for those who are asking for information on TVET and what exactly it is in Trinidad and Tobago. Join the conversation. Do your part in researching and asking the questions and interrogating to get a better understanding to help us spread the word. So, I think we want to, because we just a little bit of a self-promotion, run the video for our e-convention once more. And ladies and gentlemen, as I bid you goodbye, I want to say do have a productive afternoon and be blessed.